Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. Last video we did hood vents, so we're moving along. I don't know, kind of want to change some things up on the car, things that's already been done just to improve them or whatnot. So basically now I want to redo the sunroof plug. I mean, it doesn't leak or anything, but it's been on here for about a year. You can see the vinyl starting just to rip up, which I already have vinyl to replace it, but I think one of the main reasons why this vinyl is ripping, because if you look here, or if you remember from the video where I did this, there's rivets underneath of it, so it's just not really smooth. Plus the corners stick up a tad bit, so I just want to replace that and try to do something that's more contour. If this video's a fail, I'll just keep this in here. I mean, it's pretty easy to take out. I only got to drill out like 15 rivets and then the whole sheet will come out, and then I already have the vinyl, like I said, to replace it if I just end up going back to this. But this was just some cheap eBay vinyl. I think it was like $10 for enough to cover the roof. Alright, so basically I picked up a sunroof glass from the local salvage yard. It was like 20 bucks if you strip all the frame and everything and the motor off of it. If not, they want like 50 bucks for it. So I'm not going to be using any of that stuff anyway, so I just decided to strip it while I was there. So basically I got this frame built right here. It's just a 2x4 on the side with a piece of plywood on the top, just basically to hold that off of it, because you know that's not flat, so it's not going to sit flat on here, but with these it will sit flat. And then I have a screw in each corner. So what I plan on doing is I'm going to take the sunroof and sit it on here, but before I'll sit it on here, I'm going to put some glue on both of these so it'll stick to it. And then I'm gonna, what these 4 screws are for is, I'm gonna wrap duct tape from here all the way around. So then that way I have a little section right here that kind of comes in from where the sunroof is. And then once we have the sunroof glued down, we're gonna tape the outside. We're gonna fill this up with expanding foam. So maybe now it'll make a little bit more sense. So I have the duct tape going around, and I have lots of glue. I'm not even sure what kind of glue this is, as long as it holds the sunroof in place so it's not sliding all over the place. So I got this, so I'm going to sit the sunroof on. I'm just going to wait a while for it to dry. Alright, so I got some Loctite expander foam, great stuff, any of that stuff will work. So I taped around the outside, so hopefully when I try to fill this gap up in between the tape that I put on the inside and the outside, because I need a perimeter to go all the way around, so when we make the mold we have something that goes down on the side. So right now I'm just going to fill the gap up with the expander foam, and hopefully we'll get close to the edge, but we'll see what happens once it dries. Alright, so I ended up using 3 cans of the expander foam. You could see right here it's starting to push the tape off, but that's fine because we'll sand all that down to make it flush. I could have probably used something better on the inside than duct tape, because I don't know if you could see with the tin of the sunroof, but it started coming past the duct tape, but it's not a big deal. And in the middle I'll just kind of hit slits with a razor blade to make sure it's filling up all the way across. But the better this is filled up to the edge or past the edge, will mean less work for us in the future. But I'm going to give this thing a couple hours to dry. It's probably going to be a couple days because I have to work tomorrow. But we'll pick this up next time I have off work. We'll peel the tape off and see what it looks like. Alright, so it's been a couple days. This foam is completely dry now. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just taking a razor blade and trying to get it close to the edge as possible without going too much over. So I'm going to trim this all the way around, and then I'll show you the next step. Alright, so I have this trimmed down now. I mean, it's not perfect. There's still some edges where it's hanging over a little bit. We're going to take care of that right now. So I have some sanding blocks. This one's 80. I'm not sure what this one is, but basically I'm just going to go around the edges like this, try to get it smooth as possible, like up here, and try to get all that off. It doesn't really matter about the glass too much. So basically I want to try to get all this off right around here. So I'm just going to go around and keep sanding this until it's flush. And then, so as you can see, it's starting to smooth out. this foam is pretty much just going to be an extension off the side of this to come down for the mold. But like on this side, I'm still working on this. I haven't really touched this side too much. But the rubber that's here, like all this stuff, this has flex to it. So it's not going to be very good for making a mold. So basically, if any of you guys ever skate it and grip the board, you can cut this just like that, straight around, and then when you fold it down, you just trim on the edge, and then once you start sanding this, it'll smooth out like how this is. As you start to sand this down, where you cut the rubber, if it was jagged or wavy, you can see it starts to smooth it out. You can see it like in this corner, it's still a little bit wavy. I have to go back there. So basically, I'm using a orbital sander for like the flat spots, but around the corners it doesn't really work too well, so I'm using a sanding block. I think this is 100 grit and this is 60, I think. It really doesn't matter about the grit, you just want to really pretty much get this stuff knocked down. Like this side's really smooth because when I filled it with the foam, it filled out real good in this area. This area right here, terrible. It's super patchy. So basically, if it sticks out, you want to get it knocked down. So basically what I did was I took this spreader and I'm just going right across the edge of this. Anything that sticks out that hits the spreader, I either just pick it out or I cut it with the razor blade. So I'm just going to keep sanding this down. I got to work on this corner and that back corner a little bit more, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Now that you have it all the way sanded down, the next step is we're going to use some drywall mud. It's a lot easier to work with than Bondo. It's cheaper and it's easier to sand. So I already put some on here. This is the side that had like the bunch of holes on it. So some of this is going to be pretty thick, so it's going to take a while to dry. But like on this edge here, like you could see that indentation there and there. So I'm just going to take the smaller spreader and fill that up, and then I'll take the large spreader and go across this whole edge and try to smooth it out. We're probably going to have to do this step like 3 or 4 times to get everything perfectly smooth, but the longer you spend on this mold, the better the end product will turn out. Alright, so now most of the major holes are filled up. You can see like I still need to add some there, except for this corner, because this one was the worst. There was almost no foam in this side. So I'm going to let this dry, but after this it's going to be the messiest part, because we're going to come back. We're not going to use that DA anymore, we're just going to use the sanding block. But this, I want to change this out probably to like 120, but it's going to be so much easier to sand this because it's not the styrofoam. It's going to have that drywall mud on there, and we're going to try to sand it with this facing up so it goes nice and even. So here's the plug so far. It's pretty much all cleaned up. I'll still have to blow it with compressed air. I have everything sanded down pretty smooth. The blue line around there, I just took a paint stick and kind of measured it. This is kind of roughly where I want to have the fiberglass coming down to. But if it goes past it, it's fine because it's just a plug. And on the actual sunroof plug itself, we can cut it to size. So right now I'm just going to blow this off with some compressed air. So next up, we're going to seal everything up. We're going to be using this Glaze Coat just for like clearing over a bar counter. So basically this is a 1-to-1 mixture. I'm going to mix up a little bit more than 16 ounces. According to the directions, that should give us 4.5 feet of coverage. That should be plenty for what we're doing. So it's just use the 1-to-1 ratio mix on the side here. Fill the first one up to 4 and then the next one up to 4. And it says mix it for 6 minutes. So I'm just going to do that. And I'm just going to be using a regular brush to paint the whole thing. I'm going to do the wood and everything, all on the sides, top, and then let that dry for a while. So you can see this stuff's pretty thick. You have to stir it up for about 6 minutes. So I'm doing that right now. And then I'm just going to coat this entire piece of wood around the perimeter, decide where we put that like drywall filler, and then the glass top. This is self-leveling, so it should come out pretty smooth. Alright, so I pretty much have this thing all coated all the way around. I probably wouldn't mix like 20 ounces again if I had to go through and do it, because it started to cure really quick. It started to dry up and gel up. I don't know if you could see in this area, it's a little bit wavy, but we'll see if that self-levels. The white that you can see through it, that's the foam that we originally put through. So I'm going to give this time to dry. I'll probably mess around with it tomorrow, let it cure for the rest of the day, and then we'll come back through. Hopefully it's nice and smooth. If not, we'll go over it with like some 2000 grit or something like that. But I'll just give it time to settle and see. So it's been several days since I laid this glaze coat on the top. So I was having a problem where it wasn't laying down really smooth. So what I did was I took some sandpaper. I started at 120 and went up to 300 and kind of sanded it down so that once the mold pops out, it won't be super wavy and I won't have a lot to repair. So the tutorial that I'm following, the next step after you have this all cleaned up, I'm going to wipe this down with acetone and blow it off with some air. But the next step is to put some wax on here. So the guy that I'm following, he's using floor wax. I'm just going to use some regular car wax because I'm also using PVA afterwards. So I'll have like 2 layers to help separate the mold. So he recommends that you put a good coat of wax on here and don't take it off. So I'm just going to use some regular Meguiar's wax right now. And I'm just going to wax the crap out of it, all on the top, all on the sides, and even down on this edge here, just in case when I lay the fiberglass, if it drapes over this way a little bit. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then we'll pick up with the PVA. I have this waxed up really well now. Even the parts of the wood that didn't get the glaze coat on it, I've waxed like all the way up to here, to like right here. So that way I have plenty of area to work with. So right now I'm going to be using some PVA. So basically this is a water soluble plastic, so I'm going to brush it on in about 10 to 20 minutes. It's going to dry and it's going to leave a coating on here that you can just spray off with a hose. It's to help separate the gel coat, which will be the next step once we lay the fiberglass over top of that. So I'm just going to put some of this in a cup and I'm just going to brush it on all the way around pretty well. Okay, so I ended up doing 2 coats of the PVA, so that's all dry now. So now I'm going to add the gel coat. I've never worked with this ever, so I'm going to mix up 8 fluid ounces, and on the direction it says that it recommends 1.5 to 2.5% of MEKP, which is the additive that you add to it, which is this. So 8 ounces, if I mix it to 2.5%, it's 0.23 ounces, which I asked Siri. She told me that's about 1/2 tablespoon. So I'm gonna shake this up pretty well. I'm gonna pour 8 ounces into my measuring cup, add the 1/2 tablespoon of this, and then I just got my drill and I just took a piece of wire and I'm going to use this to stir it. Then I'm going to use a foam brush to apply it on here, and it says you want it to be a minimum of 20 millimeters thick. So I'm not exactly too sure. I'm going to have to look at a ruler and see how big that is. But I'm going to get started on this right now and I'll show you what it looks like. This stuff takes a long time to dry, so it's pretty early. So hopefully it'll be dry before today and I could start to cut the fiberglass. Alright, so I got it gel coated. Hopefully I did this right. Like I've said, I've never done any fiberglass work, but I have a pretty thick layer all the way around the sides and on the top. If you look at the texture, it's not smooth at all. And here's what I mixed up. It's already starting to dry. Like you can lift the cup up by the brush. So I don't know if it's going to take 5 hours. Maybe I put too much of the catalyst in there. because it did start to dry up pretty quick, but whatever. I'm already done to this point now. Maybe next time I'll just mix it 50% instead of the full 2.5%. But I'm gonna let this dry up for a couple hours, and we'll move on to cutting the fiberglass, and hopefully maybe today we can start glassing the mold if everything turns out good. Alright, so it's been several hours and this is pretty dry. So now I'm going to be using this Bondo fiberglass resin. I'm not even sure if this is what you're supposed to be using, but I couldn't find a definitive answer if you couldn't use this for mold. Anyway, when I was working at Advanced Auto Parts, they were clearing these little ones out for 25 cents a can. So I ended up buying like 20 of them. So I have a bunch of this. So I just put in about 14 ounces into this cup, because I'm sure I'm going to use all this, maybe a little bit more. And it says use 10 drops of this hardener per ounce. So it's the whole can. So I'm going to put maybe 3/4 of this in there, because I want to try to have a little bit more work time with it. So basically, I'm going to brush it all on here, all on the sides, and then I'm going to lay my first piece of fiberglass mat on. Then I picked up this tool, I forget what you call it, but basically you rub this on the fiberglass back and forth to get all the air bubbles out. So I plan on doing fiberglass cloth, fiberglass mat, fiberglass cloth. And I already have my 4 layers cut out right here to size. So I'm going to mix this up. I'm going to try to do this quick as possible, because I'm not sure how much time I'm going to have. But I'm going to wear gloves. I'm going to use a brush to spread it on the first layer, rub out all the air bubbles, slap the next layer on, pour some resin, get this thing going. So I'll let you see it once I get done. Alright, so here it is. Hopefully this dries up and it turns out the way that I envision it in my head. Like I said, this first fiberglass project, and it's not a small one that I tried to take on, but it seems to be going well so far. So I did use 1 layer of cloth, 2 layers of mat, and another layer of cloth. It's just the regular old Bondo stuff that you can get at the auto parts store. I ended up using 2.5 of these fiberglass resins that are 14.4 fluid ounces. So I guess like about 37 ounces. That seems like a lot, but when I rolled the fiberglass roller on there, it pushed most of the fiberglass out right here on the edges. Alright, so it's been several days since I've let this dry. Sounds like it's pretty solid now. So basically now I drew a line about 1.5 inches down. That should give me enough lip over the side to create my mold. So right now I'm just going to take a grinder. I'm just going to cut all the way around that line, because some of the resin goes all the way down, so it's not going to be that easy just to pop it up like that. So I figure if I cut it like this and then maybe cut in that at an angle, I could peel off the lower side. But I want to use a grinder, and I'm going to be using this to try to pry it. Make sure when you're doing this you do wear a mask, because you don't want to be breathing in this fiberglass as you cut it. Alright, so I got my mold off. It was kind of a pain in the ass to get off. Cutting it was super easy, but actually prying up under this edge right here, had to go around. Pretty much destroyed this. I'm not going to be able to use this ever again, but I didn't plan on it, because this is going to be a one-off. Maybe if the mold holds up, I may make like 2 or 3 and do a giveaway for 1. But yeah, I'm pretty happy so far. But this is going to need a little bit of sanding, and then I'll probably do all the gel coat and shit like that again. But if this is any indication of how light the sunroof plug is going to be, it should be super light. I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm pretty much going to wrap this video up here. The next video we'll clean this mold up, and then we'll start to lay down the actual sunroof, and we'll pop that out. And then maybe I'll do the install on the 3rd video, maybe the 2nd. I don't know yet. But this is my first time working with fiberglass. Surprisingly, it's pretty easy, like a lot easier than I thought it would be. It does take a lot of time to make the mold, do all the sanding, waiting for the gel coat and all that other stuff to dry. But I'm really happy with the outcome so far. Hopefully everything will go smooth like this on the rest of it, and we'll have a functioning plug. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down at the bottom, and like always, I'll get back to you. But until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.